Good morning. We will be following up on the couple of verses that Jimmy just read on the subject of compassion this morning. If you have been receiving the Bible, the devotional message, the last one that I did, I believe on Friday, was on the subject of comfort and how we can comfort one another, and that is going to lead into the discussion of compassion this morning. It's good to see everybody here today. Thank you for coming out. We're thankful that we have this place, that we can come together and worship God. Ezekiel, the 3rd chapter, and verse 15, says, I sat where they sat. Now, if you know the story of Ezekiel, you know that he was a refugee. He was in the land of Babylon, and all the other Jews had been taken there. The city of Jerusalem had been conquered. And now they were in a foreign land. And they were stuck. And it wasn't a nice place to be. And yet Ezekiel is out there. And he's helping them. But he's seeing much conflict and distress going on in their lives. And yet, he could say, I sat with them. I know what they were going through. I understand what they were going through. We talk about refugees today. But the idea of refugees goes way back in history. These were refugees in the land of Babylon. But we talk about Bosnia and Cambodia and places like Haiti and Afghanistan, where people have had to flee and get out because the environment is dangerous. Those are refugees who have fled. A Cuban writer in 1980, Reinaldo Arenas, said the majority were people like myself. This is Cuba. All they wanted was to live in a free world, to work and regain their lost humanity. People suffer tremendously in places like this. They leave homes with just clothes on their back. Or maybe they push stuff in a cart. That's all they have. What would it be like today if you went home and had opened the door and walked in and there was a gunman there? And he said, you've got 10 minutes to grab what you can, and you're never coming back here again. We would be distressed. But it's been that way for refugees thousands of years. We think about the faces on these people. The blank stares. We think about the fact that they have no medical attention. They're out in the cold. They have no shelter. And they just hope to survive from day to day. It was in this condition that Ezekiel found himself. Now, he is not going to be able to go back. He's going to spend the rest of his life here in Babylon as a refugee. But he could say, I sat where they sat. Now I know today, we think about refugees coming across the border in southern Arizona. And we say, well, they're taking over. And I agree, there's some potential danger. There are bad people that are coming in. They're bringing in drugs. They're bringing in all sorts of things that are corrupt. But there are some people that are fleeing because they have no home. They have no place to go. And I'm not advocating one way or the other as to what we need to do. I'm just saying it's there. It's an issue. It's a problem. Even here in our country. There was several years ago when AIDS was first coming into the picture and people were dying of AIDS. There was a group of children who were being interviewed. And they all had AIDS from birth. And some of these children had just learned they had AIDS. One little girl was asked how she wanted to be viewed by others. And tears welled up in her eyes and began to stream down her cheeks. And she said she just wanted to be treated like a normal child. And for other children to play with her and to treat her normally. Can you imagine a little girl couldn't be around other people with this disease? And she just wanted some companionship, some support, someone to be there with her. B. Warfield was a religious scholar, and I'm not saying one way or the other whether I believe in some of the things that he taught. I don't know everything that he did teach. But there's a story that came about in his life. He had just married, and he and his wife were going to take a trip to Germany for their honeymoon. And they were hiking on top of a mountain, and Mrs. Warfield was struck by lightning. And she eventually became an invalid and bedridden because of that. For the rest of her life, approximately 39 years, she lived in that condition. But it was said that Mr. Warfield rarely, and some have said that he never spent more than 2 hours away from his wife. Even though she was handicapped, she still loved to read, and he would read at her bedside day after day. He was always gentle and caring for her. And then someone said, have you ever thought about taking your wife to an institution? Then you could go out and write bigger books and have a bigger ministry. And this is what he said. No way. My wife is my ministry. I will never leave her side. I am going to love her and take care of her as long as God grants us life. Could we do that? Could we take care of a spouse who is in that condition? That's compassion. Compassion, in definition, is suffering with another, sorrow for the distress or misfortune of another, with a desire to help. Deep awareness of the suffering of another and a desire to relieve the sufferings. Compassion. Mrs. Warfield's life ended in 1915. So for approximately 39 years, Mr. Warfield was with her daily, refusing to take speaking engagements that would take him away from her in devoting himself to her needs. The verses that were read this morning, Jesus showed compassion upon that leper, and he healed him. One of the best things that we can do in life is to crawl into the shoes and skin of someone who needs us far more than we need them. We can reach out in a tangible, loving way. Turn with me to Philippians, the 2nd chapter. In Philippians chapter 2. Paul, in writing to the church in Philippi, in verse 3, he said, "Do nothing from selfishness or empty conceit, but with humility of mind regard one another as more important than yourselves. And do not merely look out for your own personal interest, but also for the interest of others." We need to learn to love refugees. You take what's going on in California today. A terrible situation. And John prayed for compassion for these victims. So all of a sudden, within just a few days, to go from having a house and enjoying it and doing the things that you want to do, to being homeless, to having to flee, to get out of there because of the danger of the fire. Do we have compassion for these people? Do we think about them and maybe seek opportunities that we can reach out? And maybe, as John said, prayers can lead us to be able to teach some of them and help them. But there are refugees in the Bible. Just go to Matthew, the 1st chapter. In the first 17 verses, we see the lineage of Jesus. And a lot of times we skip over those first 17 verses because we can't even pronounce those names. And we don't read them. But think about it. Jacob. He was a refugee from his home and family for almost 2 decades. His brothers, Levi and Simeon, committed some despicable acts that their father said, "You have made me stink in the community." Tamar seduced her father-in-law. Ruth was a widow. She fled her country and left. Mary. Think about Mary. Pregnant, not married. What did the world think about her? And Jesus, he had to face this at the same time. Growing up, people would say, "Well, you're the product of fornication. Your mother went off with some man before she was married." These were things that we don't think about all of this. Refugees. But Jesus had compassion upon these people. Matthew, the 14th chapter, in verse 14. When he went ashore, he saw a large crowd, and he felt compassion for them and healed their sick. And then the next chapter, Matthew 15, verse 32. Jesus called his disciples to him and said, "I feel compassion for the people because they have remained with me now 3 days and have nothing to eat, and I do not want to send them away hungry, for they might faint on their way." What is compassion? As I read, compassion is putting yourself in the place of another person in dealing with their distresses and misfortunes, it's like jumping into the skin of another person and getting to know and understand what they're going through. We use the word sympathy sometimes. That's not what compassion is. We can have sympathy for somebody without really getting into what they are going through. So Jesus had compassion, and he wanted to help others that he came in contact with. When we think about what's going on in the world around us, there are people who are going through much suffering. Besides those in California today and the refugees that we talk about, it might be our neighbor, it might be somebody down the street, or it might be somebody that we know through our work. Are we reaching out to help? It might even be a member of the church here that needs our help. Are we aware and helping in such a way that we feel for these people and that we want to do what we can? A couple of years ago, I was invited to go to a senior citizen home. And I went on, for about a year, I'd go every week and do Bible studies. And I got to know some of these senior citizens. They had no home. They were here. Their family, they were separated from their family. They were suffering physically. They were not able to take care of themselves. There was one woman who literally was a midget. And she was all by herself all day in her room there at that senior citizen facility. She was suffering. Are we aware of these people all around us today? Every day there are refugees in this city. What about those that are spiritually lost? Do we feel for those? When we look around, several years ago when we first moved to Phoenix, fellow Christian, she knew us. We got to know her family, and she said one day, when you walk or drive through your neighborhood, are you praying for every household that you pass? I don't know. Didn't know everybody in that neighborhood. But I think that what she said made sense. Pray for people and for what they're going through. Spiritually lost. Jesus in Mark the 6th chapter, when he went ashore, he saw a crowd. And he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. That's the way people are today. They're like sheep without a shepherd. They're like sheep without somebody to guide them, to help them, to teach them. Now I know, most of them are going to reject anything that we try to do. Most of them are going to, say, get out of my life. I don't want to hear that. Many of them are atheists. But do we care enough to try to reach out and help those people around us? Karen and I were sitting in a restaurant this last week, and our waitress served us very well. And at the end of, as we were getting ready to leave, I asked her, would you be interested in receiving the Bible message? Didn't know anything about her, didn't understand anything about her past. And she looked at us with excitement. She says, I'm not able to go to church because I have to work on Sundays. And she sent me a text yesterday. And she said, thank you for the message. And she says, I hope that I am able to come to worship with you soon. I didn't know whether she would accept that or not. But I at least tried to reach out. And she said yes. And when we come and talk to people and meet people, one of the reasons that Barney is worshiping with us is because Zane talked to him and told him about us. And some of the rest of you have done the same thing. We've reached out with compassion to try to help people. Let's keep doing those kind of things. But think about older Christians. Think about those that have gone through life. They're up in age. They're not able to get around as much anymore. They're not able to function the way they used to. Many disabilities at times. Do we have compassion for these people? Do we care enough that we can reach out and help them? And I know some of you have given people rides to doctor's appointments. You've helped others. You've taken care of their needs. Is that something that we try to do all the time? It's to show compassion for others. Young people. Do we show compassion for young people? Not just among our members. That's necessary, that's needful. But do we look around us and see that many parents in our school systems and other situations are teaching so much falsehood, turning them away from God, and sometimes Christians even growing up children growing up in a Christian family turn away from God as soon as they leave. Are we teaching and having compassion on our young to help them, to teach them, to instruct them, so that when they are out on their own, that they're able to manage, that they've been built up and strengthened to handle those situations they come into contact with? There's so many things that we need to think about. The more that we know people, the more we ought to love them. Years ago, I heard a preacher back in Tennessee make this statement. It was in his sermon, and he said, there's somebody sitting on each row that you may be sitting next to, that you don't know of the past that they've gone through. Abusive situations. And then a couple years later, he made a similar statement, but he said, now I believe there's more than one on each row. that have gone through terrible situations in life. And they need help. We need to get to know people and help them. It's important that we understand so much abusive situations have gone on in the past. There was a couple of ladies in the church in Roswell, Georgia. I probably knew them, but I wasn't given their names. But somebody shared with me the fact that 2 women within that congregation had been raped. And I don't know who they were, but like I said, I've been worshiping there from time to time. I probably did know them. And just to know them, you don't know these things. You don't understand unless you can get closer to people and help them through the trials that they're going through. Failed marriages. Look around us and look at the problems that exist in marriages today. And think about the stress and the trauma that people are going through in these failed marriages. And think about just, here I am. And there's, millions of people out there. I'm just a little person. I can't do much. But you can do something. You can reach out and help. God doesn't expect us to help every person in the world. But He does expect us to reach out and help those that we can. So when we're talking to people, and we talk to them and we say, I care. Can we even say, as Ezekiel said, I sat where they sat. I understand. Maybe you've been through similar situations and you can take their hand and hold it. And that reminds me of Job. It reminds me of Job when he first had all those trials that Satan brought upon him. His friends came and sat with him for a week and said nothing, just sat there. And then there's another situation that I was reading and studying for the lesson of Queen Victoria. One of her subjects in the kingdom she learned had lost a child. And what did she do? She found out where that person lived and went to see that mother who had lost that child. And somebody asked that mother later on, what did Queen Victoria do? And she said, she came and sat with me and held my hand. Brethren, that's sometimes all we can do is to reach out and hold somebody's hand and let them know that we care and we want to help. Have compassion on one another. Think about these things as we go forward into the week and the coming year, and help us as Jesus to have compassion on those that are going through so much. If there's someone here this morning